Welcome back to the Tree Searchers podcast. Today, I've got Callum Throw from Arb Innovators on the show. Welcome, Callum.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah,
it's great to have you down.
Yeah.
So you're based in Nottingham, right?
Yeah, so based in Nottingham, sort of near Mansfield, Sherwood Forest area. Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Well, it's great to have you down. And Callum is an Arb consultant. He's an AI and VR pro. And we're going to get into all of that today on today's show. So Callum, tell me first off, how did you get into the industry? Where did your journey start in the Arb industry?
So my journey started back 2006, it would have been. So I went to Merris Wood and I did the old traditional ND, National Diploma as it was then.
Was Andy Pinder there?
Yeah. So actually it was Derek Hansen originally.
Yeah.
In my first year, then Andy Pinder.
Yeah.
And Andy Pinder, shout out to Andy, did change.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Yeah. Really, really top bloke.
He was the only person talking about consultancy. And at the time, I obviously was young. I wanted to be a tree surgeon. I wanted to swing around with a chainsaw and do all the sexy bit. But also, I had this interest in like development and kind of how buildings fit around trees and that sort of stuff. And Andy, from that background, was like really just loved the fact that I was quite keen on that. So I'll never forget that. And I actually, when I finished my studies in 2008, because there was a period at that point you had to go and do work experience. So I went and worked for a company in Reigate, Surrey, did that for a while, did my work, and then you go back and do your second year. That was the old form. But I got an interview just before we finished the second year with a consultancy, and he was like made up, you know?
Yeah, nice.
And he was like giving me tips and, make sure you get this across and do this. And I went and I had to do a mock survey for the interview. And then I came back, found out a week later I got the job, and he was like blown away because out of everyone in my cohort, they were all going off to be, tree surgeons and that sort of stuff, which I kind of wanted to do. But then I got this job in a technical role, and I thought I want to go and explore that first. Didn't work out. 2008 financial crisis.
Crash. Yeah.
So I was in that job for 8 months, and I was working for a big multidiscipline. They did ecology, landscape, architecture, and Arb. We were a very small team. There was me and two others, my boss, and then I had a colleague next to me. And we were rushed off our feet, rammed, doing massive surveys, huge development projects, and then the crash hit. So I got made redundant, and I went back to tree surgery. So I thought, well, okay, I've got these skills, I've got my tickets from Merris Wood. I'd been doing work experience, so I built a pretty good climbing base. That's how I started. The first day I rocked up into a yard, the guy looked at me because back then I was much skinnier and more agile, and he said, "You're a climber. That's it. That's what you're going to go and do."
Nice.
So I did that. Went back to tree surgery, and that stuck there from 2009 to 2014. And then I lost my dad, which was, unfortunate at the time, unexpected.
Sorry to
and it just prompted me to get out of tree surgery. Not because I didn't like the job, it was more because the company I was with at the time, I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I just felt a bit stuck in my career.
And what sort of work were they doing, like domestic, commercial, or?
Yeah, a mix really. Yeah, domestic stuff, some highways work, and little bits of commercial. It was just quite a small business, but I was subcontractor. So for a few years, between 2010 and 13, I was a subby, and I was just a freelance climber. So I worked with people doing street tree contracts all the way up to site, de-veg, clearance, unimogs, the big kit, harvesters, and then sort of worked with this tree surgeon local to me more often, and he started using me more and more and more, and eventually he said, just may as well come and work for us. So I did.
Sound.
But when I lost my dad, it was like, that happened at work. I was at work, I was up a tree, never forget the tree. I actually had this chat last night with somebody, and I was up a tree and got the news, and I'll never forget this tree, big lime pollard, big nasty growth like this, not been touched for 30, 40 years.
There's plenty of them about.
In Utoxeter. I'll never forget it, and it was a nice day, like spring, sort of day, and got the news and had a week off work, came back, and I remember the first day I went back into the yard and just couldn't do it. I just thought I can't. It was like there was too much there.
Brick hit brick wall with it.
Yeah. I just thought I've got to get out. So went back to consultancy, and that's where I've been since, really. And then last year set up my own business. So end of 2023, I was business operations manager for a consultancy. I was running an Arb team, and just again got to the point where, like, I think always in my career it's been coming. Everywhere I've worked, I get to a point where I'm there for a few years and I start to get stale. Like, my mind's like, I want to do this, and I'm getting bored of this, and I'm getting restless. And I think I got to the point where I felt like I was working for companies that could see I had ideas, and they wanted to keep them. So it was like, tell us your ideas, and we'll sit here with a notepad and write them down, and then that's really good, and now we kind of own it. Or we'll take that on, and you go back to doing your surveys and you do your work, and this is great, let's go and do this and take the glory. And I just got to the point of, this anymore for somebody else. Why
Yeah.
am I
I want
working?
to go and do my own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why am I working my arse off for
Yeah.
somebody else to then take my idea and do a pretty bad job at delivering, executing on it? So yeah, just end of 2023, I quit my job. Didn't have anything to go to. I just decided that was it. I'm
Amazing.
going to go and do this on my own. And then a year on, here we are. So
Good.
my business is a year old now. Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations on getting started.
It was scary.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yeah, it is. But just take me back. We'll get onto your business in a minute. That I think what would be really interesting for our listeners is that I think exactly what you said happens to a lot of people. They go and work, they become a good climber, and they go through their career. And I've always said it's like a career of a football player being a climber. Like unless you really condition your body from a young age and look after yourself, which we know that most people don't, you just end up going out climbing, twisting your body, doing your back in, spiking, doing your knees in. Like there is a certain point in your career where you say, and your energy levels start to drop when you start to get older. I'm 40 now, and I can already see my energy levels starting to drop. I couldn't imagine trying to climb now. So there's always this point of your career where people start going, well, I can't maybe be as physical, but also I love the adrenaline. I love the buzz of being a tree surgeon. I love swinging from a tree. I love smashing a good job. How did you find the transition from downing tools and then getting into consultancy and then going from, like, I know not all consultancy is office based, but part of it is office based. There's some been out and there's some in the office. How did you find that transition?
Yeah, to be honest, I found it tough because the beauty of tree surgery, which I miss even now, was the sort of, working as a team, camaraderie of being with a group of like-minded people that are a little bit crazy and reckless like you at times. And you have a good laugh and there's the banter and all of that side of, being in the van together, and you become, like a family. And you look out for each other and you build a strong relationship because they've got your back if something goes wrong. Likewise, you're looking out for them all the time. So, you do form really good bonds. And I missed that when I went to consultancy because it was very much like, you're a person behind a desk and you're given a task and it's like, here you go. And often you'll find, even though like I've been fortunate that some of the consultants I've worked at, I've had really good teams, and they're the people that kept me in some of them roles for the duration I did because I didn't want to leave them people. But you do become a bit siloed. You've got your projects, they've got their projects. You spend a lot of time going to sites on your own, surveying sites on your own, driving to a site on your own. It's quite a lonely job.
Big transition, you say, between team to suddenly being on your own.
And when you're in the office, there isn't as much banter because it's an office. There isn't that kind of like we have. And that was hard because I was still young and I was a bit bantery. I hadn't been in the corporate world. And so it was all a bit...
a bit of a culture shock.
Massively. The actual transition in terms of skills, I think because I'd not been a tree surgeon for long, I'd been at that point, 5-6 years, I still had fresh knowledge from my studies. So actually applying, like writing a report or preparing something, I didn't find too tricky. And as a person, even like, a young lad, I've always been into tech. So I was a big gamer when I was a kid and I was always dabbling with bits of tech. I liked looking at, Excel and VBA and boring stuff when I was studying to make coursework, better presented or easier to do. So I had those skills that were quite transferable. And I appreciate that's not the same for everyone. But yeah, the biggest shock was the culture shock. Just going from being, every day is different. We're in the van, get to the yard in the morning, we load stuff up, we don't know what the job is, boss comes out, this is what the job is, cool, you're on your way there, you do the job, clean up. That sense of like, you start the day, you've got a big tree, you get to the end of the day, it's a reduction or, control dismantle or fell, whatever it is, you've cleaned up. You can see your work as you go in the progression. Yeah. That I found hard because some of the projects I was on in consultancy, they just went on for months.
Yeah.
So you just felt like it's just never ending and you never saw really any progress. And that was also as hard as, I know tomorrow I'm back in the office, back on that project, crunching data. Yeah, it was a shock.
Do you think it helped you that you did your studying and you studied the theory side before you even went to become a tree surgeon? Because I know my journey was, I just got a phone call from my mate Toby and I was out of work and he said, do you want to become a tree surgeon? And I was like, what's that? And he was like, you get to pay to climb trees. And I was like, fuck yeah.
Swing around with chainsaw.
Yeah, like, sign me up. Yeah. And then it wasn't until years later that I started to start and do more of the theory side of it. But do you think it helped doing theory early on?
I think it gave me like broad knowledge and I think it made me realise, because I went into it very much at 16. I'd worked for a tree surgeon in my summer holidays when I was 14, 15. Dragging brash.
Yeah.
There was a guy that I can't even remember how I got in touch with him or who, somebody in my family probably knew him. And he said, do you want to come learn some cash over your 6 weeks holiday between school and terms and just dragging brash? And after a couple of weeks, they'd leave the rope up in the tree, come down at the end of the day. Do you want to get in the hut and have a go? And we'll try and get you up a tree. And slowly, and I remember I climbed my first tree, and I still know which tree that is and drive past it regularly. And I was like amazed, wow, I'm at the top of a tree doing what I did as a kid. I spent, like most of us, spent our years building dens, climbing trees, So that all of a sudden became this like bit of a buzz, and it was like, like you say, swinging around with chainsaw, and when you go to college and the equine girls on campus and all that, and you're wearing your braces and all your gear, and so I enjoyed that side. But I think the knowledge bit I went and did perhaps showed me that there are other avenues.
Yeah,
I just knew people cut trees and use chainsaws, and it was noisy and sawdust and all that. But when I got to college, I obviously realised, there's tree officers, there's the research assistants, consultancy, there's all these different aspects. I do think it certainly set me up for my career. I went back to Merriswood yesterday, first time in 20 years, nearly 20 years I've been back. And weirdly, going back to talk to them about helping them deliver some stuff with the VR and that. So that was like a full circle moment, but it brought back all them memories of like, learning about that tree. And I remember we did inspections, and my first ever survey was on that tree. Yeah. So I think it did shape my career.
Yeah, and people like Andy Pinder and having influences like that, he was a top guy. I saw him at the APF a few years ago, and he came up to me and just said, I love what you're doing with the mastermind. Like, why has no one done this before? Like, it makes sense. And such a really positive influence guy to be around. I think sometimes we meet people like that in life, don't we? And they're just absolutely gems. Yeah, definitely. So rolling on to being a consultant and your love for tech, do you think that was the thing that helped excite you away from that kind of adrenaline filled sort of tree surgery days?
To be honest, I replaced the practical client. The way I did it, mentally and physically, was that I really struggled with, I'm sat behind a desk and some days you won't go out. Now, admittedly, when you get into consultancy, a lot of the start of it is you out on site. And what I would say to anyone trying to make that transition is find a company that is probably involved in multidisciplinary stuff. So they've got an in-house ecology team, they're doing, landscape design, they're doing the kind of master planning and all that, because you're around a lot of people that have come from a lot of different backgrounds and so they can teach you about biodiversity net gain and, bats and all this sort of stuff that's fundamental to your job as a consultant. I struggled with the fact that I'm sat behind a desk, I might not be out on site. Luckily for me, I was out on site a lot. But you would go home feeling mentally tired.
Yeah.
But your body was like,
he's still got loads of energy.
I need to do this, I need to burn off. And so I just replaced it with the gym. Yeah. And then the gym became this kind of place for me to go and burn off that, do what I'd have done, shifting timber and loading the wagon and rigging stuff off and, swinging around all day, pulling, forearms pumped and all that.
Yeah.
So I replaced it with the gym, which was great. And that way it made, again, that transition easier because I would come home feeling brain dead and then I'd, chuck my gym bag in the car and go to the gym and burn off some energy.
Yeah.
And that really helped. And until recently, it was still a routine I've had for years. Running the business, that's had to push aside, and there's a lot of Premier Inn meals this week.
Well, that's what happens. So when you want to start running a business, like some stuff's got to give.
Something's got to give.
Something's got to give. And I had the same with. I was playing a lot of golf a couple of years ago. Then business got really busy, and I want to see my kids, and something's got to give at some point. And I'm similar to you. I go to the gym every day, and it's the one thing that I do now that if I don't do, one, it messes up my head. I find it's a lot better for my mental health. I find that it unknots everything, but also I miss that physicality of being on site, that adrenaline, and that going to the gym every day just helps get that a bit of that air, get that testosterone building up, just burns a bit of energy,
sweat on,
exactly that. So you've started your own business, and I very much know that we were talking a minute ago before we started recording, but you're telling me about VR and how you're using VR. So I'd love to really just explore that now. So let's go completely layman's terms, just for anybody listening that might not know what VR is. What is VR and how are you using it?
Yeah, so, what the premise of my business is. So as you know, in the tree surgery world, and there's a lot of tree surgeons.
Yeah.
So standing out in a crowd is quite difficult.
It is.
It's the same with consultancy. There are so many consultants now in your area that you have to have something slightly different. If I came to the market a year ago with just a business that was doing BS 537 development surveys, tree risk surveys, like everyone else, there's nothing to set me apart. I saw an opportunity to bring my love of tech, which I'd been developing over a few years, into what we did as like a USP almost. So using things like AI to help speed up data collection, to help analyze data, write reports, marketing, social media content, website. There isn't a thing in my business that AI hasn't touched. And that's me being really honest.
Yeah.
And Also drones. I've been a big lover of drones since about 2015. That tech's more accessible and easier now than ever. I mean, back when I started playing with it, you were buying parts from China, waiting 3 weeks for them to be shipped, and then hoping you'd ordered the right thing, and then trying to figure it out. Now you can buy them off the shelf and off they go, and pretty much anyone can fly them.
And they've evolved. I mean, we bought a
Massively.
Phantom, one of the Phantoms, one of the first ones about 8 years ago, and we had GoPros and we were filming stuff. And now one of my guys has bought a drone, and I just look at it compared to the Phantom. We still got our Phantom. They're like tiny, and how they all like auto fly, and you know, I remember
4K image.
We were crashing ours all the time. Like it was just like relentless. But it's amazing.
I mean, my 5-year-old can fly mine, so that's
amazing.
Yeah. So I saw that was an opportunity for gathering better evidence, for getting site photos, for helping clients. You know, a lot of time client comes to you and you're giving them data from a survey, but they're not getting any added value. So I was like, well, if I can collect the data as part of my survey, but also give you high-res photos, decent base mapping, maybe a video flyer to help with their site promotion, they loved it. Because they're getting this, you know, I'm not charging extra for that. I'm there, it'll take me 10 minutes to do it, so I'll give you as added value. And then, recently, I'm a big lover of photogrammetry, which is like creating 3D models from loads of photos stitched together. And I saw that for tree inspections or describing decay or a hollow or a cavity or whatever it is, rather than having 2 or 3 paragraphs in a report that's quite heavy going, I could just have a link to a 3D model, which I can annotate, and people, you know, your client, who's a layperson, can look at it and go, I see now what he's trying to say. And, you know, it comes back to like accessibility and all those things and neurodivergence and all that sort of stuff. There are people that are much more visual learners now than ever.
Yes.
So there's no point in having this really heavy report. I'll be honest with you, most of our reports, people want to know, like on a development, they want to know what the impacts are and what's your conclusion. That's it. Everything else is kind of irrelevant.
Like not the 50, 60, 70, 80
describing every tree.
I know we get to price off a lot of people's reports.
Yeah.
Like you just go, right, where's recommended works, right? Go and price that.
Where's the tree schedule and what's the recommendations? And that's it. And you want a clear plan so you know when you're on site, you can find the tree or price it. And so that was my whole premise. Like, how can we use, you know, drones? How can I use photogrammetry 3D models to cut a load of that waffle out and just get to the truth quicker, get the answers out there quicker, or help my client go, I can see what they're trying to say and I can see what needs to be done.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all they're interested in. So there was an element of that. Then the VR stuff came about. So about a few years ago now, I had an idea about VR. And this is always crazy to say. You're going back 4 or 5 years. And in tech terms, you may as well be going back 50 years.
Yeah.
And I had these ideas and I could see that VR could be used for training and education. But I didn't quite know how to get content onto VR and do all that. And I, you know, obviously I was working in a company where we didn't have somebody that had a specialism in that. We didn't hire a software engineer or a games designer or anything like that. So I sort of sat on the idea, parked it, and then in the last year or two, I've kind of explored it more and realised that VR in the training world could answer some of the problems we're facing. And you're probably hearing more of this from your side of things, like the practical side, than I am in consultancy. But a lot of people are going to college or going and getting their tickets and doing a 2 or 3 day chainsaw, you know, small to medium tree felling course, getting a ticket. But then they're coming into the job world, asking for a job, and they've just never had to deal with a tree in a real world setting. Got a greenhouse, a shed, an A road, whatever.
Yeah.
So then it's quite daunting. You know, they've been trained at, like, in my case, near me, Cannock Chase or somewhere where the trees are all pretty straight. It's fairly open. It's a controlled environment. So I started seeing a use for VR to expand that skill set.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing your training, you know, sometimes it's a 2-3 day intensive course. You're trying to process everything that person told you to ultimately get a ticket.
Yeah.
So you're like, I need to do this, like your driving test. I've got to do it in this way and this way only because I need to get the tick at the end of it. So I've got my certificate and my boss is happy, or I can go and get a job. The issue with that is they're not put into loads of different scenarios. VR gives you the ability to film and put content into a headset that they can then get exposed to a range of sites. So in your case down here, you'll have access to land that up north where I am, with a completely different landscape. You know, when you think of the Scottish Highlands versus a heathland in Surrey, where you've got a fire risk or something from refuelling in the summer and putting a hot saw on the ground and all that. Whereas up in Scotland, where you might have a plantation, you don't have the same amount of risk, but you've got undulations or more extreme weathers. You can teleport people to them and say, you know, now we're in this environment and I've filmed somebody working in this environment to show you what they have to think about leaving a bigger hinge on a cut so it holds so the tree doesn't slide down the bank and all those sort of things. And that's where I see it. And I've been working recently with a couple of people to film some content. So like kickback, really basic stuff, just rather than the teacher or the training provider or a lecturer standing at the front with a presentation, 2D, the slides are 10 years old, pictures are a bit grainy, whatever, and them saying, yeah, well, kickback kind of feels like this. And what you'll do when you get out of there is you'll plough the bar in and, it'll kick back at you and you kind of try to describe what it's all through. You could just put the VR headsets in a classroom, play a 1 minute video showing it, break it down as they're watching it, pause, zoom in, then take the headsets off. Chat. It's like this blended approach to learning.
Yeah, amazing.
And
which is amazing for our industry because, as you say, a lot of people, like, even when I do the 3-day course, I can always see around the room it's a very content heavy for 2 days, and we do business planning on the third day. But then, like, I always say to people at the beginning of the course, like, I appreciate this is not your natural environment. Like, you're used to being out on site, like adrenaline filled, and now you're going to be sat in a classroom for a couple of days.
Hard to stay awake.
And I have to bring a lot of energy to it to try and keep everyone engaged. And we have lots of breaks, and it's challenging. So once you put that, and I'm even sat here going, how can I use this for my courses? Like, this is going to be game changing, really.
The best way to put it is distraction free learning.
Yeah.
Because as we know, the modern world, like you say, when you've not been in a classroom for 10 years, you come in a classroom, it's warm, it's cosy, seats are a bit comfy. After a bit, you're starting to feel a bit. By keeping it blended and, right, we're going to look at scenarios, people all of a sudden start doing this, and they're looking around and they realise look behind and they see stuff. And you're talking as the training providers, they're watching it going through. And we've staged some where we've had different scenarios. So I've done a cross-cutting and snedding one and knocked a tree over. And there's 2 scenarios in the same video. And the first one's 30 seconds long and it shows all the things you don't do. Visor's not up, ear defenders aren't down, straddling the log, not putting the chain brake on when moving. Then you play scenario 2 the right way and you go back through it with them on and you can skip back through the video and say, did anyone flag in his ear defender now? You hear people literally, I've done it this week. Oh, didn't even see that. Yeah, there's the other things we're looking for. You can circle it, draw it, they can see what you're annotating on screen. It's amazing. And the studies show like 4 times knowledge retention.
Amazing.
So compared to traditional lesson classroom environment, 4 times knowledge. And the other advantage is they can go back and watch it again. So you're not doing that training once. They've had a really hectic day. They get home, how did your day go to the partner? Oh, I'm knackered. I've got loads to think about. I've got to go back through the course manual. I've got to try and figure out my exams on Friday. I'm stressed, anxiety, all that. They can go back. You could give them a library of that content. Say, tomorrow with your phone, because you can look at 360 stuff really basically with just your phone. Or if you've got an Oculus or something at home, which it was the biggest selling gadget this year at Christmas. So most people know because the kids have bought one. So nick your kids off them when they're not on it in bed. Put it in there. They can go back and look, oh, that's how I'm supposed to do it. That's my technique for cross-cutting. That's how I do my hinge. That's
rather than just reading a manual. Which
exactly.
How many times does someone pick a manual up after they've been on a course? Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not picking it up.
No.
It just goes and sits, either gets binned or sits, doing, as I call it, shelf development and never gets looked at again. But something that is visual that you can use, the chance of someone picking that up and going and learning and retaining that, as you say, is game changer.
It's because it's tricking your mind. You can put it on and stand there, and all of a sudden you're now next to that tree watching someone fell it again. And if the instructor's doing like a demo to camera, which you're watching, like you're stood in the field with them, that's what it is. It's building muscle memory and tricking the mind. And this came up this week. I had a meeting with the Arb Association, and back in September I'd shown them virtual. So this was actually, you could walk around and inspect a tree. So we went to a national school and college leavers conference, and I took a VR and got kids doing virtual tree inspections where they could walk around a big beech and an oak and spot cavities and this sort of stuff. Shout out what doesn't look right. These are kids, they don't know the techniques, but they say, well, it looks like there's a big wound. Excellent, Here we go. That's what we want. So got into that, but there was one of the people that was on the stand, she had a go in it. And only 5 minutes, she was probably in it looking around this tree, oohing and ahhing and that sort of stuff. In my presentation to them on Tuesday on a slide, there was an image of, oh, I remember that tree. I said, oh, that's interesting. What do you remember about it? Oh, it was an oak tree. Yeah, do you remember? Yeah, it had a fungi at the base. But I mean, she's not an arborist. She's, in sort of the admin team. And she said, yeah, and it had a hole at the bottom. Yeah. I said, do you remember where it was? Yeah, it was like next to a building, like a waiting area. Yeah, picnic area. Yeah, do you remember? Yeah, a theme park. I said, that's mad because you just proved my concept of the knowledge retention. You spent 4 minutes looking at that tree back in September. You're now remembering everything. And she says, yeah, I can remember walking, like looking at it.
Because you can picture it all and you've seen it. Yeah.
Because your brain's there going, oh, we did this. And you've remembered it. Whereas if I say to people, what did you watch on TV 2 nights ago?
Yeah, I haven't got a clue.
I don't know. Because they've got probably sat there with the phone. like in the classroom. It's a big issue with colleges at the minute. That little distraction device keeps pinging off. They get out in the field with a chainsaw first time, a selfie.
Yeah.
To the mates.
Yeah, well, phones are a huge one. I mean, I could rant about that for ages, but
But the other things are like crane work. I mean, again, I'm not a tree, so I know there'll be a lot of tree surgeons. Please don't, go mad at my tree surgery knowledge anymore. I'm a consultant now. But obviously, you've got your crane work. We've got more mechanisation than ever coming into the industry.
Exactly that. And there's not enough guidance for crane work or mech or using things like Merlots and stuff like that. We're still way off the pace, especially compared to the Aussies and the Americans and stuff with that. There needs to be more for it, because the way I see the industry evolving is more mech. There's always going to be need for labour, always going to be need for that. But we're at a shortage of labour anyway. We've got a labour shortage in the industry. There's more mech coming in it, but then with more mech becomes more risk. With using big things like cranes, Merlots, like how do you train people to not make mistakes without having to go and make the mistakes, which could be life-ending, life-changing potentially.
And there is a lot of it I see on social media, because the one thing that the tree surgery world is good at is they're very good at social media. Yeah. Everyone now got helmet cams and all that. You see a lot of that content is great, but you also see a lot of people now buying these like Merlots and these things, and you see some of the practices with it. And I'm no expert, so I don't jump in and get vocal about it. But sometimes I think, that looks like it's boomed out a long way with all that weight on, all that load. And you think, is that right? Like, I mean, I don't know. So I sit there as I'm technically a layperson on that side of things. I've never done any training on it. But when I think back to like my career, we did crane jobs, and I'd never had any training. Like, I'd gone to college and done, they train you up to get your tickets. You get your tickets. But when it came to advanced rigging, putting chains on stuff with a crane and how to get it lift away right and all that sort of stuff, that was just pure. You'd hope your boss had done it before and he was shouting at the ground. And you're like going, okay, I think I'm doing this right. Let's just see what happens. And I think there's a massive opportunity there for VR, because essentially, if there's people out there doing that regularly who've got the knowledge and they can get that, whoever likes of me or whoever, build some content, because you go to a training provider, not everyone's going to have those machines. So you've got to go to that facility. If you live on the south coast and the person doing it in Scotland, quite a big outlay. You've got to get a flight, hotels, stay up there, hope they've got trees that they can show you to do it on. Or you work for a company that's got one and you hope someone there knows what they're doing to train you and pass that knowledge on. And that's it. Whereas if you can film inside a car, the controls work, this is do's and don'ts, this is how we properly stage it, this is how we need to put mats down under the feet, whatever, all that stuff. And that, again, can be this blended. There'll be elements of a normal presentation and a chat, and then let's put some headsets on, let's have a look at it, let's transport you virtually to the cab, let's show you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, because there's been Merlots falling over, there's been all sorts of things.
You see it on Facebook and see it on Instagram.
And I've watched some of the stuff, and you sort of just think, wow, that is an accident waiting to happen. And people are kind of just doing it and working out as they go along, which then leaves us in a tricky position. So I think, massive. That'd be huge to be able to do that.
The difficulty is at the moment is everyone thinks it's an independent headset, so you can put it on, and you can do that, but there are solutions out there, which I'm working with a company this year where it's linked up. So all these headsets can be linked together. So you can have 35 people viewing the same thing, and they're doing it. They use it massively in the fire and rescue service now.
Yeah.
And they use it with police force for doing TPAC training. They use it for, putting out a burning car, all that stuff. Because the fire and rescue service saw that they were, putting people into recruits and candidates in dangerous situations with very little experience.
Yeah.
And also...
And it's still that risk thing again, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, there was an issue of every time they burnt out a car, they had to take all the pollutants out, all the plastic, all the oils out. Every time they did it, which could be once a week, they're having to... We need to find a mangled car that we can cut up and all that. Now they just film that content once and refresher train every 6 months or whatever it is. And everyone just goes to the training facility, puts their headsets on. It's a guided thing. Yeah.
Amazing. So then can you, going away from the training part of it and then back into consultancy with VR, if you've got like a school site, for example, and you go and do a whole report, I take it using your drone and things like that, and then would that be something that you can use in VR, or is that...
I think VR for the consultancy side of things and the master planning is good for visualization.
Yeah.
So showing, this is the site as it is now. This is where it looks like from different vantage points. This is perhaps that tree and there's existing road layout going through there. We've got to dig up and that road's being moved or it's been widened or whatever. Again, you can teleport people to that area.
Yeah.
And as you're discussing it, whether it's at a consultation meeting or a design team meeting, people could go into that, and rather than them trying to visualize, I kind of get what you mean. So you're saying there's a trying to vision from a 2D plan or just you describing it, they can actually, okay, let's put the headsets on. We've got some point. We'll show you. We can take you there. You're now stood on site virtually.
Yeah.
And if you look to your left, you'll see the manhole covers, and that's got we've got a service run going. Oh, okay, yeah, see that. So that's massive. I mean, in construction, it's already used. Particularly in America, they have whole augmented reality stuff now where you've got all your like drains and pipes and stuff. So when you come to do trenching, in our case, it could be looking for roots or to avoid roots when putting pipes in. You can literally look through it and see in augmented reality an overlay of the pipes and all that sort of stuff. So that's the application that it's really good for. Or I know there's a guy in America working on felling sites where he's identifying the trees to be felled through virtual or augmented reality. So rather than spraying the trees up and all that and doing these like forest calculations for timber volumes and all that, it's all just being done. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then you can visualize what it looks like. So when we thinned it, 10%, 5%, whatever it is, essentially it can delete those trees from your site and you can start to go, okay, that's what it looked like when we thinned it. And yeah, that's the application there. When it comes to drones, I get asked this a lot. Are you using all your surveys? And the answer is no. You can do quite a lot with drones now with like a LiDAR and stuff, but it's really process heavy.
Yeah.
A lot of data, huge. I'm talking like terabytes of data. So then you've got to store it. And you've got to work with it, so you need processing power, decent computer to run the compute on it, and also you've got to share that with your client.
Yeah.
And the big issue is
got to be able to accept it somehow.
Someone can't accept it,
Yeah.
And like you think of like a local authority, most of the time they can't open anything over 10 meg.
No,
and there's no good sending them a terabyte worth of data
and everything. And
yeah, we've still got a bit of a disconnect with LiDAR. I feel. I think it's really good for certain things. And it definitely has its use, but it's not something really that you share beyond a team.
Yeah.
So if you're a project team working on that project, great. If you're passing it to a client, you've got no hope of them doing anything with it. Drones are good for getting high-res aerial imagery for a base map. So say you haven't got a topo, so topographical survey, and you're doing like a planning, development survey. You want your trees to be in the right place. You want it to be accurate. And some clients don't always get topos because if it's early stage, they might not have one because it's quite an expensive thing to get. If it's a homeowner, likelihood is they don't really want to pay for a topo. So that high-res imagery is really good for helping you in like your mapping tools and all of that sort of stuff. It's great for getting photos. Some people are using it for tree inspections. I think it's limited still. I don't think it matters how good a pilot you are. Flying through the dense crown of a tree is quite hard.
Yeah.
So I think it's limited in that application. Yeah. It's good for making 3D models. It's good for producing video of sites. Easier when you're in a meeting to say, this is the site, this is the lay of the land. If you're, say, doing a site de-veg and it's really dense and you can't get in because it's not been touched for years and the brambles are head height or rhododendron or whatever it is, you could fly your drone through in theory and say to your team, that's where we're going to access. Here's something to, from a safety point of view, steep drop, whatever. We've got a good scope of that. So when you're in your meeting planning your works, you've got an aerial view of it that's really high res, better than a satellite image. And you can say, well, if we cut a swathe through there, we can get the machine in, then we can start working that unit. You can plan and coordinate your site works a lot more. So it does definitely have huge uses, and the barrier to entry with them is so low now.
It is, yeah. So tell me about AI and how you're using that in your business, because I certainly know that when I talk to people about AI in the Arb industry, people are like, well, how am I going to use AI? Unless they start making an AI cutting robot, which is then going to make my job obsolete.
Or a drone with a laser.
Yeah, drone with a laser. What's AI got to do with Arb and in the business? And I know, I certainly, for context to listeners, I've been using it a lot. I use ChatGPT. I've been using a few other things. I use something called Fathom for recording all of our calls, all our Zoom calls and trainings. It just descripts it all, records it, and we can highlight bits. And we've been using a bit, but I feel like I am just right on the surface. So how have you been using it, and what's it doing for your business?
For your benefit, you're miles ahead of everyone else.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're at with AI, is that some people are not using it at all.
Yeah.
Some people have maybe gone in ChatGPT because it's one of the most popular. Most people know what ChatGPT is. They've gone in and they've gone, oh, cool, I couldn't be bothered to write this. I asked it to write it. It kind of spat something out that was all right. It saved me 5 minutes because I'm being lazy. I sent it back to the client. They were quite happy. They got the response they wanted or whatever. Then they don't really touch it again because they're like, okay, it was cool. It did something, but I don't really know what to do with it now. And certainly when it comes to like implementing into the business, they sort of go, well, yeah, but it's a big job. And, we're so used to doing that and we're so embedded in our system and we use a spreadsheet and that does everything. And, John in the office, he's really good at that's his job, and I don't really bother and I don't get involved in it. You've got to start seeing it as a business operating system. It's like the operating system on your phone in the sense that you know what it's capable of, you know what apps you use regularly, and you've got to get into the habit of checking them every day. And I say this to companies now, and I'm helping a few, what can we move into AI? So it's probably important to say when we're talking about AI, we're really talking about things like ChatGPT. We're talking about those generative AI tools, large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, Google Gemini, there's loads of them now.
Yeah.
But we're talking about you put a text input in or an image in or upload a file and you ask it to do something with it or generate a response to something. That's what we're talking about, really. I always say to people, break it down to really some things. What do you do every day? A repeatable task that takes your time or your team members' time, 20 minutes. It's not the most, you don't need to overcomplicate the task. Maybe it doesn't really take much thought, but it's just a repetitive task. Then bring that into ChatGPT, because it would probably take 30 seconds and not 20 minutes, and it'll free up your team member or your time to actually go and do something that's more important and more valuable.
Yeah.
And when you're like a business, like, so me, I'm, one-man company, I think of the amount of stuff I do that I would never, well, not necessarily never been able to do, but it probably took 3 years, not 1 year. Yeah. So when I started the business, I quit my job in the November 2023, started trading on January the 1st. In that about 5 weeks, I'd built a whole website, I'd written my copy, it done keyword research for me because I did, trained expert chats to do all this, and then basically, structured the page content, H1, H2s, SEO optimized. That website now ranks well for a lot of terms. No paid ads.
Do you find that, because someone told me that Google will downrank stuff because there's like a watermark in it, but I just guess that that's something Google would say. Do you know what I mean? Like, Google would say that because they don't want everyone using ChatGPT.
There was a lot of scaremongering at the start with people going, oh, if you, blogs written by ChatGPT, it's going to, flag it as AI content and say, right, push that to page 100. That never happened because in reality, Google realised, hold on, we want to start using AI, otherwise our business model is dead. And we generate so much revenue from ads that actually, if we penalise everyone using AI, then we're going to essentially lose market share even more. Because people go, well, we will just stop using Google as a search engine. Or, as they're finding now, ChatGPT is a search engine in its own right.
It is, yeah. I search everything on there now.
Exactly, and a lot of people do.
I'm getting it to write me training plans for the gym and all that kind of stuff. I ask so much.
So if they penalised it, there was no end game for them in doing that. It was actually more detrimental to them. I can say this page on my website that had been 90%. Okay, you still have to finesse, you still have to tweak. You can't take it as gospel, and that's one thing I will say.
You can't just copy and paste everything.
No,
that's what I've learned.
You still got to polish it.
It's good for ideas and creating a lot more.
Me brainstorming.
I failed all my GCSEs, and English is definitely my worst one. So as soon as it came out, I was like, I just need to get into this. Is saving me hours.
Yeah, and this is the thing. That's what you've got to start seeing it as, is like, what can we move in slowly? Like, I'm not saying all of a sudden you've got to sit with the team tomorrow and go, right, just offload everything and let's try and do it, because it becomes overwhelming quickly. You realise there are certain limitations to how it works. You've got to understand how to get the best from it. You can put one input in and get one okay output.
Well, it's what you put into it. It's the
training. It's the initial.
It's a training. It's what you ask it. It's what you put into it. Because otherwise, it just it could be just generic. If we just went, write me a blog on Ash Dieback,
you're going to get something, but it's terrible.
You're just everyone's going to get the same blog and put it on their website, and it's just going to read the same thing because everyone's asking the same generic question. But mine's learned all about I put all my Fail Forward podcasts in there. I've put everything to do with my company.
Like, so it now knows who you are, what the company does.
Every time it writes stuff for me, it's just linking it back to all the 3-4 businesses that we run. It's I read the other day, I was reading a blog, and it said about AI is that in the future there'll be a one-man band billionaire business owner, because he will just, there is going to be, or a woman, should I say as well, one person, billion pound business owner who is just using AI as an extension of themselves. And I think the opportunity for tree surgeons is everyone's always talking about this low profit margin industry where everyone's tight, everyone's fearful of charging the right money, and people they don't want to be taking on loads of people because of the overhead cost. So it's not going to replace everybody in our business, but like you say, it could use, like my commercial manager, he's always flat out, he's never not busy, like he's either quoting or organising work. But if we can start just lessening his load by 20%, then he can be going out and winning us more work. Taking away those the day-to-day stuff.
The stuff that you get bogged down doing because it's kind of fundamental to a process, but it's not important for you specifically to do it.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, like once, like you say, so you've done a good thing in like you've kind of trained it so it's got knowledge on who you are, your tone of voice, your brand voice, brand image, what you know, by feeding it your podcast, it'll know the topics you talk about, things you're interested in, what your business is trying to
all
portray.
our company policies,
exactly.
health and safety policy,
Exactly.
all that
So
stuff.
it knows that. And then from that, it becomes your expert. And, you know, you have a series of like very experts that do very specific things and they do one thing only. I get this goes over some people's head because some people never touched this level. And I do a fundamentals workshop, which is just like an introduction to these tools. I run them now because I realised that I was kind of thinking that everyone was where I am and understanding it. And there was a lot of people going, I've never even used it, or I've used it and I didn't get what I wanted, so I stopped using it. I thought it was a bit crap. And you're like, yes, because you're not using it properly. You need to understand how the model works to get the best from it. And yeah, going back to like the business, I know there's a lot of people out there listening that'll be like, you know, to start a business, you've got to employ people. You've got to get an admin person. You've got to get somebody doing the quoting. You don't. Like all of that is gone. And the one thing that AI has done for me is it's leveled the playing field. In the consultancy world, I can now compete with teams of 12, 13, 14, companies of 20. You know, I put out more marketing content than and they've got a full-time marketer. I can create graphics. I can create infographics. I don't need to be in Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator whiz. I can create formulas in a spreadsheet that means that when my data comes in, I don't have to sit and manually type it up or make a graph for it. All that's done. And I got, you know, I can get ChatGPT to make, I don't need to understand formulas. I can say, this is what I want to end up with. This is what I'll give you. And it, off you go.
Yeah.
And then it comes back and you engineer that into your processes. And this is the thing, like marketing straight off the bat, all your copy. You go on LinkedIn now and open it up. I can tell who's writing with ChatGPT.
Yeah, you can.
You know,
you can.
And it's like policies. You were saying reviewing policies, preparing bits of reports.
Health and safety. We were talking about health and safety earlier, and like, you know, the Arb Association of becoming Arb approved. Like, you know, you can be getting it to read all your policies every 2 years and say, can you review this and tell me
what's the strengths, what the weaknesses, what gaps is there, how can we improve it,
and what do we need to review? Right, that's done again. Roll on for the next 2 years. Everything's reviewed. Whereas, like, you know, for the last 10 years, I've paid. Well, Sophie doesn't work for me anymore, but I paid Sophie a big sum of money to ensure that we were compliant all the time. When actually now, you know, my office manager now can just use ChatGPT and all our policies. We're compliant. We're doing everything properly. Yes, we're still briefing them to the teams. We're not going to get ChatGPT to do that, but we're going to get it to do the heavy lifting. Suddenly,
doing that,
saving money, saving time, be more efficient,
and freeing up time for your team to concentrate on applying themselves to like new ideas, to coming up with or doing them jobs that you've been putting off because we've been so bogged down with admin. We can now sort the yard out, or we've all of a sudden got a day a week extra where we can go and pick up another job because I'm not spending a day in the office doing all the paperwork. Like most of us as businesses hate doing paperwork. I hate doing all my, you know, invoicing, chasing people for money. You know, the quoting, understanding why I didn't win a quote, doing the follow-up on leads, all that. You can automate a lot of that. And at the moment, if you're using ChatGPT or something similar as a standalone thing, you know, there's still an element of you having to ask it and it goes and gives you the answer and you check it and all that.
We're getting there's a lot of backs and forwards. And I think it's just that, like, I built a workbook the other day. It was all my content. It helped me extend that content, structure it. But I structured it and then I just went backwards. Actually, I don't want that there. Can you move this here? But like, it took me about an hour to create this workbook. And I looked back and thought, if I was really working on that with my kind of ADHD brain, my busy lifestyle, I reckon I probably would have been working on that 2 weeks ago before that came in. 2 weeks on and off. Whereas I sat there on a Sunday morning, an hour, 2 hours
and
later,
decent.
And I'm like, I've got something decent. My wife just chucked it all onto a PDF for me. We printed it out, bound it up, and we've got a workbook. And it's like a couple of hours rather than me like doing my head in for 2 weeks, putting it into one side, going back and working on it a bit, picking it down. So, like, you know, it's not just, I think people also think that, oh, I'm going to put something in, it's going to be generic content. It's not. It's a tool to put your own thoughts, your own mind. Like, you can voice note it. You can voice note it and then go, write me this.
This is the thing I would say to people: treat it like an assistant, like a real person. You wouldn't just hire somebody and they walk in the door at your office for the first day, like I did today, and you say, "There's your desk. Yeah, you need to use your computer and just do a load of induction stuff." Okay, cool. Right, I've got stuff to do. That person would literally stand in the doorway going, where's my login? How do I even log on? What are you expecting from me? Do I need to get all this done today? I've got 2 days to do it. You know, there's a bit of back and forth with ChatGPT, another large language, not just ChatGPT, but it is the most popular and for a reason. It's, I think, the best in terms of ease of use and everything else. But there's a bit of back and forth. But you can say to it, what you've given me is not great. I'm not, it's not quite what I want. I actually prefer the style a bit shorter and conciser. We were talking about Alex Hormozy. I like that for my marketing. I want that disruptive, very open, very valuable, engaging content. I don't want fluff. I don't want just to put about content out there. It's a bit, oh, look at what we do. We're so great. I want it to be like, this is what you can do. This is how you can do it. This is how I'm doing it. You can tell it that's the brand voice, right? Because it knows, because it's harvested the internet. It knows who Alex Hormozy is. It knows what content he's put out on the internet. It can hone it to those brand voices. And you touched on like ADHD and stuff. I appreciate that not all of us are the most academic. In fact, as an industry, I'd say most of us came into this industry because we weren't particularly academic at times.
Yeah.
And a practical vocation was far better for us. And it can help with that. You don't need to be the best, speller. Your grammar doesn't always need to be the best. It kind of understands what you're trying to achieve. And I use it a lot. And I said this to someone the other day, they never thought about this. And again, goes back to I just think, everyone's doing what I'm doing. And I said, I use it sometimes driving along in the car, listening to a podcast on business or whatever. I think that's a great idea. And I wonder if what that person's talking about in the healthcare industry would translate to Arb. And I'll start, your mind's going and you get really hyper-focused on it. And you're like, oh. And then I get home sometimes, I just dump it into ChatGPT. I'm like, I've had this idea for this. This is what I'm thinking of. I heard a podcast on this and it gave me an idea. We could apply this to Arb, but I need to know how I could apply it to Arb. I don't want it to be anything complicated and I want to kind of understand it. Can you make sense of this? And I've literally done that, dumped like 3 paragraphs like I would on my partner. I love you, all right. Oh, yeah, but I've had this idea. And I've just done that chat and it's gone, let's break it down. Let's go through it. And then you go, cool. Can you make sense? Can you give me bullet points and maybe cut out some of that? And all of a sudden, your idea is becoming something because it's helping you.
Amazing.
So
love it.
If you're a business owner, use it. Start using. It's not even a start using it. If you're not using it, I guarantee you're going to struggle.
People get left behind,
this is going to be
there'll be a lot of business owners. I've seen it with getting trolled, and just with the mastermind. The mastermind's a very new concept in our industry, and anything that new, people instantly they close up and just go, "Oh no, I'm all right doing the way things I'm doing. That's cool, but." Things will move on.
When the internet came about, people didn't really get on board. I know people now that have been doing consultancy for 20, 30 years still can't draw plans in CAD, still can't use GIS, whatever. And it's okay because they've hired someone in the team and they're a bit of a whiz at that and they do our plan drawing and all that. This is not the same. AI will be embedded. It already is. You turn on the TV and everything's AI-powered dishwasher, and you're like, what the heck?
Well, even Starmer came out the other day and said they're going to be doing a massive push
because
on
they've got to.
They've got to, because otherwise they're just going to get left behind.
And this is going to move. I started doing talks on it a year ago, and I every month have to refresh my course because all of a sudden they've added a new feature. This has changed. That's no longer true. It's moving at a massive pace. And
to be fair, your talk was talked about at the Arb Association of Day in our mastermind.
Oh, okay.
Because we're talking about the AA conference and a couple of tree surgeons said they went and weren't completely impressed with the whole thing. But they said, there's this guy Callum there and he did a whole thing about AI. So it made an impact.
And that's changed since September. Some of that knowledge. And I even said to them joking at the start, if you leave this room and your mind's a bit blown, don't worry because the knowledge is probably out of date in a week. So don't worry about it. But it's, you've got no choice with this. If you're not using it, there are small businesses that never used to be able to compete because they didn't have the manpower or the person power, woman power, whatever you want to call it. But essentially now, like myself, can. I don't need a marketer. I've got one virtually. I don't need necessarily help with SEO. I need to understand what SEO is and I need to understand the basics, but I can ask it for keyword research and help me with that. I don't need to know how to do advanced formulas. I've got an idea. This is what I want to know. I can do it. Yeah, it's great. That's how crazy this potential is.
Love it. Cool. I mean, this has been a great interview so far. A great chat. So tell me, we've talked about VR, we've talked about consultants, we've talked about your journey, we've talked about AI. A question I always love asking people is if you were going to start again in the industry from where you started, knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently? And if you would, what would it be?
This is going to sound a bit crazy because people that know me will go, what's he talking about? I don't think I'd go as slow as I have. I sat on my hands for a long time and got sort of, particularly in the consultancy world, almost battered down because you're not at the level to be around the table to inform decisions. I would be outspoken for a bit and probably ruffle feathers and upset, a director or a couple of people higher up than me. And then they would see it's really quite challenging and outspoken. So, here he goes on a rant again. I got that a lot. And I used to rant and rant and rant. And then I'd just go, there's no point fighting anymore. And I've sat on ideas like drones and stuff for years and never really done anything because I've battled, and then you get worn down with the battle, and you think, well, so I'm only getting paid, 35 grand a year. Why am I fighting this? Why am I going home stressed and tired? So I would probably just pivot quicker.
Yeah.
I would say, if this isn't the place for me, and I don't feel like I'm moving forward, and I believe in this, I'm passionate about it, then I need to either work for a company that does go, we'll help you get there.
Yeah,
we want to be on the journey with you,
yeah,
and we want to see you thrive, and we want to see you flourish.
Which I think is really important, because I got told in early years by my contracts manager, my first job, he said, to become a good tree surgeon, you need to work for multiple companies, which I kind of agreed with for a while. But then now looking back at it, what I believe is that you need to work for a company that believes in you and your ability, and sees you and sees your skill, listens to your visionary things that you'd come across with, and you can feel part of and grow with. It's not necessarily about working for multiple companies.
No,
it's working for somewhere where you do go, right, I want to use drones, and someone doesn't just hit
they just go, no.
Well, no, we're not doing that because we're stuck in the old ways.
Yeah, they explore it with you, and they're willing to kind of fail with you. Because I don't really like the term like fail. Like, I used to see it as a bit of, when I went into consultancy, like a bit of imposter. So I do now. I sit here now and we're chatting, and I talk about AI, and people ask me about drones, and I'm not the most knowledgeable drone person. I'm not, certainly nowhere near an expert in AI or anything. But what I have done is just applied a bit of my time to get my head around it, and then start to see the potential of it. And that imposter syndrome exists today, and I don't think that ever goes away.
I think it does. I still get it now.
Yeah, I don't think
21 years in the industry, and I still sometimes stand up there going, who the fuck am I to be saying this to all these people? You know what I mean?
And I think it can cripple you.
Yeah.
I think in this industry, it is such a small industry, and everyone kind of knows everyone in some way, or you bump into someone at a conference or the Arb show or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you kind of worry. And I think for a long time, I struggled. I nearly left the industry because I'm not the most passionate person about trees. I like trees. They've given me a lot of joy in my life.
Yeah.
But would I drive to the other side of the country to go and look at one tree, like a tree pilgrimage? No. Am I that invested in it? And the answer is no. I know enough to do my job, and I do my job, I think, fairly well. And I keep my knowledge kind of refreshed where I need to, if it's important for my business or for me, for my development. But I loved tech, and I found for a very long time that I didn't feel like I fit in, because I was like, I'm not really bothered about going on that course and knowing about that stuff. I want to know I can build this to make the work easier so that we're not as stressed. Like, that was more, I was more of a processes person. So I didn't feel like a fit for a long time, and I kind of suppressed it. I kind of thought, well, I need to get along because I don't want to upset anyone. Yeah, I need to perform. And also, at the time, you go on social media, and the big names in the industry, the old guard, as I call them, you were scared to put anything out in case they said, what are you doing? Yeah. Who are you talking about this? You don't know what you're doing. And there was a lot of that, and there probably still is to some degree. But I've got to the point where I shut it out now.
Yeah, just think, fuck it.
If people want to listen, they'll follow me.
Yeah.
If they want to follow me on LinkedIn and connect with me, cool. That's your choice. I'm not forcing you to follow me. I'm not forcing VR, photogrammetry, drones on people. I'm just saying this is what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm passionate that this solves a problem.
Yeah.
And if you want to know more, cool. Come and ask me.
I agree. I think we all worry too much what people think.
Yeah.
And I think that we're subject to that. But and
it holds you back.
It does
hold you back.
And I think in the last few years, I've just got to the point where, like, my mentor, Rob Moore, really helped me with this. Just like, people are going to have an opinion about you, whether you say something or not. So you may as well just say and think how you feel. Yeah. You'll get some people that will go, I resonate with that, and cool, we'll follow that, and other people that won't. But they're still the same people, whether you say something or not.
And Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't know if you listen to Gary V. Some people love him, some people hate him. He does go on like a broken record at times. I like him, but
good energy.
Yeah, but he says it the best that if you listen to the hate, then you're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you might get 10 good comments and one, shitty comment from somebody. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
And if somebody's got time to sit there and try and tear down what you're doing, then you've got to ask what they're doing in their lives.
Yeah.
Like, well, where are you giving value? Where are you trying to help educate young people? Where are you trying to help mentor people to move from the tools to consultancy and realise it isn't as big a leap as seems to be made out sometimes? That qualifications don't matter for everything. I'm level 3 ND that really, like I say, it doesn't really exist in the form it did in 2006 or 2008. That's it. I don't have a degree, not because I wouldn't love one, not because I'm knocking anything on it, but I've navigated my career by just following what I love and enjoy, and that's tech.
And
guess
adding
what?
Value.
Yeah, and as a result, I've gone into teams where people are really good, really knowledgeable tree people, but don't know about how to, do formulas or do this or build something. And that's where my career's progressed, because I've added value to the team, or they've come to me with a problem and I've gone, reckon I can work out to get a solution for that. There must be a tech way of doing that. That's it. Okay. And I'd say that to anyone out there. Don't be put off like, you need this qualification, you need to do this. follow what you're interested in. If you've got an interest in climbing trees and you want to go and invent the next latest climbing piece of tech, and I know there's a lot of them out there now, way more than I was in it, but if you want to go and work with a company doing that, get out there. Stop talking about it. Make content. It's free. Like social media is free. You know, people moan, "Oh, I only got 3 likes," and again, back to Gary Vee, and he'll say it's not that the algorithm doesn't like you; it's just that your content's not great.
Yeah.
So be a bit more humble and go back and assess it and go, okay, what could I do different? How can my content add value to people's lives? Because people remember people that give away content. It's true.
Yeah,
like I share my stuff, and people always say, "Aren't you worried that someone's then going to start doing it, and they've already got 100,000 clients, and you've got 2, and they can move quickly because they've got loads of money in the bank?" No, because there's enough work out there for us.
There's loads.
And if they want to go and do it, great. Because to me, people start using tech more, and it moves the industry forward. And that's great. I want to be an industry that's thriving, not an industry that's dying.
Exactly. And that's what we're all about. It's trying to level up the whole industry and giving out that, I think it's Rob Moore also said to me, be a creator, don't be a consumer. The more that you're consuming, the less that you're doing, and you need to just get it out there so that it's free. Yeah. And it's just that, it is that sometimes that fear. But if you believe in what you do, you want to add value,
go with it.
Just go with it.
Yeah.
What's the worst going to happen? People forget it like in an instant. Yeah. And if you can put some value out there, some content that just helps change one person's life or helps improve the industry a little bit, then it's a win.
You might upset one person. One person might not look what you're doing, but 5 people might turn around to you and say, that's great. And that's my biggest win of last year for me, was that I'm not doing this to make a big fat check and get out in 10 years. It'd be nice to have a nice house and a nice car. Of course, we all want those things as well. But I want to leave a legacy. And, I had people coming up to me at the end of last year or reaching out to me on posts when I said, we've done a year in business. Big deal. I don't always see it like that, but it is a big deal. And I put it out there. This is what we've done. This is the numbers, really transparent, because that's what I'm about. I want people to know. If I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And people were messaging me privately saying, you've really inspired me. I bought a drone because of you. Because of you, I've tried this. And that was way more valuable than the 65k revenue.
And that is the buzz. And I can tell you now, before my business went under, we had a nice house, I had a nice car, kit car, camper van, had nice things. But that didn't bring me. There was some happiness.
Something empty.
There was happiness there. I wouldn't be lying to say like going and ragging out my little Lotus 7 round a track was like a lot of fun, but it was empty and it didn't fulfill me enough. And going out and doing exactly what you said, when people on the mastermind, when people on my content say to me, "Henry, you've changed my life. Henry, you've helped me make more money. Henry, you helped me that." That's the thing that fulfills me. That's the thing that gives you that little buzz, that little kind of like, you're helping. So I completely agree. Our values align massively. I think this has been...
Weirdly, it does pay as well, because people remember you. They remember that you helped them and gave them a leg up. And if they become successful, which is what we all hope for everyone, if you don't want anyone in this industry to be successful, then I question who you are as a person. Yeah. Everyone wants...
I've met a few people like that.
Yeah, so have I, and I know I had a few. But there's enough work out there. And like I said, we want the industry. It is struggling for succession. There is a big problem at the moment with attracting people or keeping talent in the industry because of pay gaps and all that, or just because no one really knows what arboriculture still is to this day, which frightens me no end. And it's like that when I was 16 and now I'm 36 and it's still like that.
Changed.
And I would say probably even worse. But, there's an opportunity for us all to help with that succession by sharing insight, by making young people who come into quite an intimidating small group, because it is a very small kind of, cliquey group at times, to know that, there are people here that will help you. We will give you advice. If you've got an idea for something, don't let one person trash it and then you go, okay.
Well, if I'd listened to the trolls and haters, I wouldn't be sat here now.
No.
And very much in the early days, the first year, I had people messaging me saying, just what the fuck you doing? Fuck off, you're embarrassing. All this stuff. And if I listened to it all, I wouldn't have been... I wouldn't be helping supporting the businesses. We wouldn't be having this conversation now.
No.
But then actually, the funny thing is, I've had people message me that have trolled me and say, really sorry, I've got to know you. And actually, you seem all right. And it's sometimes it goes around. But
we're all different. I mean, in my...
Not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone's going to like you.
No.
Not everyone's going to listen to the podcast and go, that was amazing. I think it's a great podcast. But that's just life. Life would be boring if everyone just loved each other.
Yeah. You're never going to see eye to eye with people. And when you're young, when I was a teenager, early 20s, I was a different person. The person that sits here now, I was a different person then. I was very cocky. I was a bit of a Jack the Lad. I thought I knew it all the times to bosses. I was very outspoken, probably quite rude at times, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And they probably did sit there thinking, who's this jumped up little twat, And then I sat on it for a bit and I changed, okay, rather than being destructive and being a little force for nature and actually pissing people off, there's an opportunity for me to here go, you know what, I can help, I can solve problems and I can share. And now my legacy, I want to see younger people coming in, because without that, we're doomed. But equally, I want to show to people that I'm nothing special. You know, if you've got an idea, if you've got passionate about something, you believe in it, go for it. That is it. In this industry, there are huge opportunities. And don't say that lightly. A lot of us start off as tree surgeons, and it seems to end up that you run a tree surgery business or go into consultancy and become a contracts manager. That's most people's career path. And if you think you can do it, then go for it. And particularly when you're younger, because as you know, when you're younger, you might still be living at home, or you've got another life to live to turn it round. So if it doesn't work, you can learn from your mistakes and you can pivot.
I started at 24, lost it all at 2.
Yeah,
rebuilt again,
and there's still time.
33, 34 I was. There's still plenty of time, and I rebuilt it again, and you just learn from all your mistakes.
And don't see it as failure. Just learn from it. They're all teaching points in life.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. Cool, great interview. Love this. It's been a really good chat. I'm really great. Me and you met just through LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and by chance you're here. So it's been really, really cool. If people want to connect with you, where's the best place to connect with you?
Personally, on LinkedIn. I push a lot of content on LinkedIn, so just Callum Throw on LinkedIn. Arb Innovators is our handle on Instagram. I say ours, it's just me, but
and if people want to, I think you mentioned workshops and stuff. If you want to go on workshops, just
reach out to me. I will start advertising them more this year, but at the moment, people have just been reaching out to me. So done a couple of consultancies. There's a couple on a list to be done in the next couple of weeks. I run a 2-hour sort of fundamentals to like ChatGPT, really.
Yeah.
How to use it, how to get better results from it, and how to get into the mindset of starting to plan migrating some of what you do into AI. And that's online, up to 5 people. It's not a massive cost. It's, works out like 60 quid a person for a 2-hour workshop. And there's a lot of knowledge in there.
Yeah.
And then after that, people reach out and message me, and I give up a lot of my time for free of mine. So I'm not the best businessman, I've realised this week.
But you've got to keep giving value. I believe in karma, good things, giving value. The world aligns. So thanks so much for coming down, Callum.
That's been great.
Yeah, really good to meet you. And we'll get this episode out soon.
Cool.
Cheers. Thanks all for listening, and we'll see you next time.